Welcome to the Time to Practice podcast. This is a space where we talk about music practice, the ups and downs that young musicians go through related to practice and learning music, and how we as parents, caregivers, and music educators can support the young musicians in our lives, support ourselves, and support each other. My name is Christine Goodner. I'm a music educator, author, and podcaster who has made it my mission to talk about music practice and to support educators and families looking to make home practice more effective and to reduce conflict and frustration in the practice room. I'm glad you're here. Welcome, everyone. You are listening to episode 118, and I am just recently back from the jointly held SAA ASTA conference in late February 2026 when I'm recording this in San Francisco, which was such an amazing, energizing event. I gave a couple of talks. I attended many fantastic sessions that colleagues gave, and I had such a great time just connecting and speaking with lots of friends and colleagues. So I feel like I am re energized and re inspired for the rest of the school year here. And today I wanted to share a little excerpt from one of the topics that I presented at the conference about helping students develop focus and attention. And this past weekend, I gave a follow up online talk to parents on this topic. And what you're going to hear today is a small section about ADHD and focus in particular from that. And, if you'd like to hear the whole recording, please reach out. I can let you know how to purchase a personal copy for your own viewing of that talk. I always have fun talking about topics like this. And so in this excerpt, you're going to hear me talk about the idea of an attention flashlight, which I don't flesh out in the little clip a lot, but which I first read about from Dr. Amishi Jha and her work in her book, Peak Mind. And I've also heard executive function expert Tara Sumter, who came on the podcast in episode 115, talk about it at length as well. I'll link to her episode on the podcast in the show notes so you can find it easily if you haven't listened for a while or haven't heard that one yet. I often get asked about supporting students and children with ADHD related to music practice. So I hope this information is helpful, and I will for sure follow up in a future episode with some very specific practice strategy ideas related to ADHD as well. Enjoy. Great. So let's talk just a little bit about ADHD and focus. There are a number of conditions that could affect our focus besides ADHD. I'm focusing on ADHD today, partly because that's what I know the most about. And also because we have this short time together, I picked one of these topics. But there's other neurodevelopmental conditions that could affect our focus. Autism, dyslexia, sensory processing differences are a few that I could name. Also, what's called acquired neurodivergence, things like a traumatic brain injury or a concussion. There's also sometimes medications or medical conditions that cause there to be issues with focus or attention or working memory, like the ability to hold things in our brain that we're going to do next and remember them. So there's a lot of reasons that our focus could be affected. But again, we're going to talk a little bit specifically about ADHD right now. I just wanted to acknowledge those. So on the screen in front of you is this iceberg picture, and underneath is a link. Attitude Magazine is a great resource for ADHD. They have this attitude slash school link that you see on the screen is a great place for teachers to go to look for resources. There's lots of resources on the website for this magazine for parents as well. And in your handout, there's a link to a particular handout that has an iceberg on it that talks about ADHD and fine detail for teachers. I think it would really benefit parents to see as well. So I wanted you to make sure you could go get that after this talk. So I'm kind of citing some information from here, but what tends to be most visible to teachers, maybe parents as well, are the things we can see about ADHD, maybe hyperactivity depending on the type, impulsivity, inattention, maybe it seems like they're, daydreaming or thinking about something else besides what's going on. But there's a lot that goes on under the surface besides that. Neurotransmitter deficits in the brain, executive function skills beyond focus that are showing up and looking like focus from the outside. Sometimes there's issues with sleep related to ADHD. That delayed brain maturation, they listed it in this resource as a 3-year delay. Other places said 30%. There could be coexisting conditions that also are affecting focus, low frustration tolerance, and also could be learning challenges in a variety of areas, and like memorization is a big one. I think it's really helpful just to understand what the student is experiencing. Often I see things about ADHD as a person with it that talk about the effect of ADHD on others and how frustrating it is for everyone around them, which I can understand it is. But also sometimes we forget to think about what is the experience of the student or the person with ADHD? What does it feel like to them to be the learner or to be the practicer? I think it's very important if we're going to help our students, our children, to really put ourselves in their shoes a bit and see like what's could be going on for them that we can support and help with so that then they can be more successful and they can focus and also feel supported and um, like they're getting what they need to be successful. So uh, in this handout that I'm referencing, each of these bullet points you see on the screen right now has many more bullet points describing some specifics about this. So if this is interesting to you, I encourage you to go find that. I think is super helpful resource. It's really important to know that ADHD is not a lack of attention. It's often described as experts as being too much attention, and it's really an issue with controlling where that attention goes. And uh, ADHDers are often described as having an interest-based brain. So the teacher can be giving a great lesson, or the parent can be really doing everything they can to help engage the student with practice. And maybe the student is really, really interested in the bird that's outside the window, or a little sound they can hear in the background, or something they saw earlier in the morning that's just on their mind. And so that attention flashlight is going to something else that is not the task at hand. But it is very interesting to the student, and they are paying attention to something. It's just not the something we would hope they were. So I think that's really helpful. That's where that flashlight analogy could be really helpful for the student and just remind them to bring the flashlight back to what they're working on. And we'll talk about strategies more, but how do we make it more interesting for them to do the thing we are asking them to do? They might really need that. Dr. Ned Hollowell, who's a big name in the ADHD expert world, talks about having an ADHD brain, excuse me, is like having a Ferrari engine and bicycle brakes. And this always makes me chuckle. I think it describes things very well. That inhibition piece that we saw on the slide with the iceberg earlier, that can be a big thing where a student does something and then they really didn't seem to think about it first. They just did it and then it's causing stress or causing problems. And so I think the really important thing that I've learned about inhibition is that the way inhibition works is first our brain thinks about something and then inhibition has to come in and stop us from doing that thing. So if it's like I would really like to use my violin bow as a fencing sword right now, for example, first that thought happens and then inhibition has to come and be like, oh no, my teacher told me that would break the bow, or my parent has told me many times cannot use my bow as a sword. Um, but for students who struggle with inhibition, it's not working very well for them yet, and they may be too late. So they think of the thing and do it, and then they're like, oh yeah, I shouldn't have done that. And then that can cause a lot of stress. So I think this is important to understand. It doesn't mean we say it's a free for all and anything goes. It's just understanding what's happening is that inhibition piece. It still needs coaching and practice, and there's hopefully a lot of progress that will happen with it. The other thing I want to say is that your students, if you're a teacher, might need support and scaffolding or, small steps, we could call it, for their executive function skills, including focus the whole time that you work with them. And if you're a parent, it could be the whole time they live in your household that they are going to need extra support. So when parents ask me, how long will I need to remind my child to get started with practice, for example? ADHD here, who spends her whole life as a musician. My parents had to tell me all through high school to get started. And it was partly because I was just bad at managing my time and switching tasks and planning backwards from when bedtime was or when people would be sleeping in the house that I should not interrupt with my music. I was really not good at figuring out, oh, this is the time I should start in order to make this happen. And I needed that support all through high school. And I'm really glad my parents didn't give up doing that. It wasn't that I didn't want to play, it was just these other executive function skills were not going great for me. Now I can plan backwards and, set alarms for myself. And decades later, I can do it myself. But I just want to give you the encouragement. If you're a parent who's supporting your child a lot, you are helping them develop the skills to support themselves later. And I know it can feel like a big emotional, mental lift to provide so much support, but some of our kids really need it. And um, I think music is so good for them. I would not take it as that this music is not for them or they're not interested in what they're doing. One thing I see a lot, and I know I was guilty of doing it as a parent myself, is just we have our child in front of us trying to practice, and they're, looking out the window, maybe at the bird I mentioned earlier, rather than engaging with what we're doing. And we might say like, focus, focus, and try to get their attention. And I think on the surface, this can appear to work because I think it sort of startles the student or the child out of wherever their flashlight was. They're like, oh, I can see, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And they kind of try to reorient themselves to what's going on. But I would just say this in the long run is not going to help our child develop the skill for themselves because we are just startling them into putting their flashlight where it belongs. And instead, we want them to notice, like, where's my attention right now? And then, bring it back with that effort on their own part. It doesn't mean it's not frustrating. It doesn't mean we're never going to say to them, focus, and then be like, oh, yeah, I wasn't going to say that anymore. But I would just encourage us instead to ask the questions of like, where's your flashlight right now? Or, what is your brain thinking about right now? And just be curious so that they're curious with themselves. I think that can be really helpful for our kiddos in the long run. So, one quote from Tara Sumter, who came on my Time to Practice podcast in episode 112. Again, my favorite executive function expert. And this is a free resource, the Time to Practice podcast. In fact, by signing up for this talk, you are helping support the fact that this podcast exists. And I would love you to look for this episode if you find this interesting anywhere you stream your podcasts. But she says, a child's success is dependent upon our willingness to not give up. We have to just keep going because some kids need a lot more repetition, and that's okay. And this is just an argument for, she said people were asking her like, how often are you going to and for how long remind this child to keep focusing or bring their flashlight back? And she just says until. Like, we just keep working with them on these skills that they're developing until they don't need it anymore. And if that's the whole time we work with them, whether we're their parents and they're living with us or whether we're their teacher, that's okay. That just means that child still needs that support. And what a gift to be a person who is getting support from adults around them and people are not giving up on them. So it's your dose of encouragement to keep at it today. Before we go today, I just want to say that advice to not give up and to keep supporting our children and students until is the idea I would love to leave you with and send you off into your week with today. Whether ADHD is in the mix or not, this is such a valuable gift to give the young musicians in our lives, to keep supporting them and to not give up. So with that, I will look forward to being back with you next week. I have a great interview I'm excited to share with you. Happy practicing, everyone. Take good care.